Welcome to the Recovery Toolkit podcast. I'm Richie. I'm going to be your host. Throughout the series, we're going to talk to a range of different people who will give you tools and tips to help manage your recovery. The podcast itself is being brought to you by Epic Restart Foundation, who are a national charity who support people to rebuild a positive life after gambling harm. So today on the Recovery Toolkit podcast, I'm joined by Chris Hulse. Chris, you've been somebody that's been around my recovery for a little while now, so I'm quite excited to have a conversation with you about your 11 years in recovery. So, I say that because that's a massive achievement. So firstly, well done on 11 years, but I want to know a little bit about it. And that's selfishly why I've invited you on the podcast, so I can find out what goes on in 11 years of recovery and what is it that you have to do and what is it that you've experienced and what are some of the challenges that you've been faced. So if we go back all the way to Chris entering recovery, what was that like? How did that happen?
Bluntly, it was down to an ultimatum at the time. My partner had basically found my bank statements, seen the extent of the gambling and said, you've got a problem we need to deal with. Either you seek help, and we didn't know what that looked like at the time, but either you seek help or there is no us, essentially. There was me, my partner, and my daughter was 3 years old at the time. So it was really important to me. Family's massive for me, always has been. And it was really important for me to hang on to that any way I could. So initially, the support that I looked at was the online Gamblers Anonymous meetings. And I was just sort of kidding my partner, I'm seeking help online. I'm doing what you've asked, And then it took me probably 3 weeks to go to a face-to-face meeting. And that's how it started. So back in 2012, there wasn't as many options in terms of support networks and companies, organisations around, and Gamblers Anonymous was the first place to turn at the time.
Yeah, Gamblers Anonymous is a big part of your life, or has been a big part of your life over them 11, 12 years.
It has been. It's been sort of quite the constant, if I'm honest. As it stands now, I'm secretary of one of the 3 meetings in Newcastle a week. And that's part of what I do to give back to the people that were there to support me at the beginning.
Yeah. So at the beginning, when you first went into Gamblers Anonymous, the online meetings, and then the in-person meetings, what was going on for Chris then?
Probably a battle between acceptance and denial. So, at that point, my partner was ahead of me. You've done this. You've caused this problems, financial, emotional, all the rest of it. And I was still in denial. I couldn't possibly have caused that much problem. I couldn't possibly cause that much damage. And then over time, the realisation of, yes, you did. Yes, you need to admit it. But then what are you going to do about it now?
Yeah. And that's big, isn't it? Denial is such a big part of the journey, I believe, because it's the moment we surrender, the moment that we hold our hands up, and the moment that denial stops. I believe that's when you can start doing the work to improve and move forward.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's certainly easier to say that in hindsight, but going through it at the time, it wasn't. But yeah, once I realised the only way to deal with the damage that I'd caused and to address it and to try and put it right was to accept that it was me, then I started to make progress. Realistically, that's when I started even the little things, habits, mindset changes, and the day-to-day version of Chris basically changed.
Yeah. What was it that you got from gambling?
Initially, excitement, the thrill, the anticipation, those kind of things. By the end, routine.
Yeah, habit. You just mentioned it, wasn't it?
It was just, that's what I did, day to day. My phone was attached to me. That's what I did. That's how I passed the time. Or, again, being honest, that's what I made time for.
Yeah.
But yeah, by the end of it, routine. I don't even think, to be honest, I would have known whether I was up or down at certain points. The only time I ever really knew where I was in terms of the gambling progress, if you like, on that day was when I tried to place a bet and it got declined.
Yeah. And that's a big thing, isn't it? Like, we just lose track. We lose track of money. We lose track of time. We lose track of so many things
Purpose.
in active addiction that hopefully they're the things that you find again in recovery. Or hopefully that's the things you find in recovery. You just mentioned a big word there, purpose. You know, what purpose 11 years ago? What was it?
As I say, what I mean, I'd lost track of purpose. I had no aims, goals. It was just day to day, get up, do this. Everything else was in the way. Get everything out the way as soon as I can so that I've got more time to do this. And get up again tomorrow and do it all again. I've said before, it's. I'm not saying it for sympathy, but it is quite a stressful existence when you're in addiction, active addiction. You know, you're definitely not sleeping properly. You lose track of time. You're definitely behind with a lot of things. You know, work to pay the bills was minimised. Time with the family minimised. I would be there, but I wouldn't have a clue what was going on around us. All these things is, like I say, just the whole sense of purpose, no direction. It was all gone. I now have these things back. I have more than one purpose, and that's what I've gained from it.
Good, good. I love the fact that you say, now I have those things. I want to know how you discovered purpose. How did you actually go through recovery from them first early meetings? What happened after that? What did you have to start doing?
Realising where I'd gone wrong. Vowing never to go down that route again. And I know specifically for Gamblers Anonymous to say one day at a time, but you have to open that out at times and vow you're never going back to that version of me that I became. That version of me might exist, not as a gambling addict. You know, I might be obsessed with something else, but that takes the habits back to where they were. I've got to try and constructively move away from them. And the way I see it is, I'm trying to build a cushion from where I was on day one.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important for people to hear, if I'm honest. Gamblers Anonymous, we mention it a lot on here, but I don't think we've ever explored what actually is Gamblers Anonymous and what is it and what does it look like. And if somebody's sitting there going, I'm struggling, Gamblers Anonymous is an option, but I don't really know what it is, what would you tell them?
I basically compare it to some of the things that are available. So you have psychologists, psychiatrists, those people in that field who I say have the textbook knowledge. They've read it. They've learned it that way. Gamblers Anonymous is the lived knowledge. They've been there, seen it, done it. I wouldn't value one above the other. One works for some, one works for others. It may be a mix, a combination, various other things outside of the two I've just mentioned that works. But Gamblers Anonymous is basically a group of people that get together who've lived it, who've been through it, and now want to try and soften the blow for others and support them moving forward.
Yeah, and it's peer support, isn't it? It's lived experience, helping other people that are suffering the same thing that they've suffered.
Massively, yeah.
Something you mentioned there is like there's other options, and I think it's really important that people know there's other options. And I'm a firm believer in if you give people a raised awareness and informed knowledge, they have autonomy to choose. How important is it that people find their own recovery path, Chris?
Massive in terms of the chance of it succeeding. It has to be right for you. And like I say, I wouldn't value one above the other. It's not my place to tell anybody else what's right for them. But again, similar to what you said in terms of autonomy, it's about giving them an informed choice. If they don't know what options are out there, they're already limited. I have to tell them as much as I can tell them, as much as I know, and then allow them to make the choice what's right for them.
Yeah, so something I want to touch on, you said you were given an ultimatum, you know, and a lot of the time I hear people, I was dragged in by my mother initially, you know, it didn't work. I wasn't ready. How did it work that you were given the ultimatum? Were you ready at that point? I know you've talked about denial and stuff and maybe not knowing the full extent. I just find that you were given that ultimatum, and then since then you've been in recovery. Like I love that. I truly love it that something was powerful enough in that ultimatum that caused you to change. You know, I was given loads of ultimatums, loads. I'd manipulate, I'd cheat, I'd steal, I'd do all the things that I could to show that I was doing what people wanted us to do, people pleasing in a way, but then just go and doing my own thing anyway. So the fact that you sit there and say, you know, that was what got us in there, and I've been in there since. I love that. How did that work for you?
The reality wasn't that sort of cut and dry. As I say, there was probably 5 or 6 meetings before I realised I had to be there for myself and work on myself, and everyone else around us would then see the benefit. The ultimatum was massive, but as I say, it still didn't click immediately. Mm-hmm. Get a hold of yourself, get on with this. So there'll be a few people that know, but I was actually out of the country when my partner rang us and said, I found your bank statements. I used to work as a support worker for adults with learning difficulties, and we took a couple of residents over to Spain. We were in Torremolinos, and we were sitting around the pool. There was 3 staff, so 2 were on. It was my day off. Had my phone next to us, my phone rang, and the name came up. And I'll be honest, my first thought was, who's died? If she's ringing me over here, it has to be massively important. Who's died? I picked it up, and she just said, I found your bank statements, you know the rest. And from then, I've got no say in the matter at that point, so I just said, so where do we go from here? And she said, well, I've spoken to your parents. When you come back, you go straight to their house, your stuff will be there already, and I still want to be with you, but I need time and space to get my head around the damage you've caused. So when I came back, airport, Mum and Dad picked me up, I went home. I found I was a 30-year-old boy in my Mum and Dad's box room, basically, and I had nothing. I didn't wake up under the same roof as my partner. I didn't wake up under the same roof as my 3-year-old daughter. I didn't get to take her to nursery. I didn't have any of that. And those are all the strands from the ultimatum. That was the day-to-day realisation of, you need to sort this out.
Yeah. And they're powerful things, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. And massive for me. Like I said before, family is massive for me. That connection, being lost, I needed that back.
Yeah. I can hear it in your voice, Chris, as well, how much it means to you, just by the way you're saying it, you know. And for me, that, when you said before purpose, that just comes through 100%. The purpose I have now to get my life back on track and sort it out is, I want that family. I want that family unit back together, and that's got to be me drive and me purpose to sort it out. I also like your honesty in the fact that I was going there for 4 or 5 sessions and thinking, what's this about? Like, do I really need this? The bit denial. Yeah. And then you had this big realization that, fuck, I really need to do this for myself. That's a big moment, isn't it, in anybody's recovery, anybody's journey?
Definitely, yeah. I think it's that, like you say, that initial thing of, you work on yourself, you put the work in on you. Others around you will notice the difference over time. Others around you will see the benefit. And then your relationship with them improves. The benefits of the dynamic there change. But it starts with you. Yeah.
Tell us some of the early days. I know you were going to Gamblers Anonymous, but what was some of the work you had to do in those early days? You know, obviously, you've mentioned finance. You know, there was a strain on finance and commitments and stuff like that. There was relationship problems. You had to move back into your parents' house. A lot of people, when we talk about gambling, they just want to focus on that money, don't they? But actually, there was a whole load of other shit going on as well, isn't there?
Huge fallout from it all, you know, in terms of relationships. So again, that whole denial thing, you know, I sort of cried wolf and played on it to my parents. So then their relationship with my partner Emma changed. They saw her as the bad one in it and not me. And then over, like I say, as the weeks went on, I started to open up a bit more to them. And then Emma had then had a conversation with me, and I had to go back to them and say, listen, you know, I may have said this, but actually this is the truth. This is the honest part of it. And I think we need to reevaluate the whole dynamic here. A lot of work on that side had to go into it. Financially, I was a mess. I had 11 payday loans, 2 credit cards, an overdraft. I had a £4,000 loan, which I thought was from my partner. She tried to help me out during it. I thought it was from her. It turns out it was from the mother-in-law, and I was paying her and she was just transferring it to the mother-in-law. So I'd had a lot of support given to me, and I'd like I say, I just took advantage of it. And all that had to be sorted out.
So what were some of the steps to sorting that out?
Acknowledging them
Yeah.
initially. Planning. Once I'd kind of got the headspace back, you know, the clarity back, and the mist had cleared, if you like, then it was sitting down and planning, right, how are we going to do this? This is what's caused. And still what's the fair way of going about this in terms of finances, for example? You know, it's my damage. I wanted to put it right. I wanted to step up to the plate and say, it's nobody else's fault but mine. I need to be able to put this right. Short term, that meant, for example, I would pay off £500 in a month. But then I might have to go to my parents near the end of the month and say, out of that 500, I really need 40, 50 quid back. And that's how things played out at some point. So, but ultimately, I was always taking a step forward. And that was the goal, realistically. As long as I was moving forward, whatever shape that took, keep going.
Yeah. Did you get any help, like, from any other external organisations to sort your debt out, Chris? I know we work with a few now, but I don't know if they were that well known then.
There was Step Change at the time. I'd gone to Step Change, and you do your budget with them, and they're quite generous with it. And some of the advice I had been given was don't overstretch yourself, because then you'll resent it at that point, and you'll start to think you're getting nothing from staying away from gambling. But I wanted to, as anybody probably in financial insecurity, they want to get back to that secure footing, so I wanted to push. But yeah, Step Change helped me out initially. I did a few years under a plan with them. That helped me massively to get back onto a stable footing. And am I clear now? I've been clear more than once. As I said before, life will throw challenges at you, and sometimes you have to deal with them. But the other side of that is, I've got credit card debt now. I've got other bills I need to pay. But I've got experiences and I've got positive memories from them, rather than just the negative thrown away money from gambling. Yeah,
definitely. I think the relationship that many people in recovery from gambling harm have with money is a tough one, isn't it? It's like, I know I've had to retrain myself to value it, you know, because I didn't value it. That was ultimately, I didn't value it. I didn't value it when I was gambling. I didn't value it when I was drinking. I didn't value it when I was taking drugs. When I got in early recovery, I still didn't value it. You know, like, that's the truth of the matter, Chris, is my early recovery, my relationship with money was shit still. You know, that's the truth. If I'd started playing golf, if I wanted a new golf club, I'd buy a new golf club. Oh, well, I haven't got enough money. Oh, well, I'll just bump the gas and electric. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'll catch it up next month. I'll put a payment plan in place. And because I'd put that many payment plans in place previously, I knew I could always put a payment plan in place. And I was kind of manipulating this in my early recovery. And that's just me being brutally honest. I had to learn that you've got to take responsibility for your finances. You've got to take responsibility about where your money goes. And it's okay if you have a bit of debt. I think debt makes the world go round. But is it manageable? Are you committing to the payments? You know, is it causing any difficulties in any other areas of your life? If it's not and it's manageable, you know, debt makes the world go round.
This is why I kind of not framed it before, but why I mentioned it as positive debt, because as I said, when it was gambling debt, it was gone. It was just numbers, tap them on a keyboard, press enter, away it went. It wasn't money at all, and I got nothing from it ultimately. Now I've got debt, but it means I've been to places, I've got experiences, I've had time away with my partner, and we've been on trips with my daughter, those kind of things. I've got things to show from it, and I've got memories that'll last a lifetime from it.
Yeah,
I don't mind paying a monthly payment for that. I don't mind that taking time, because I didn't have it at day one, but I've got something from it now.
Yeah, and that's how long do you think it took you to get to that point of like having positive debt, if that's what you want to call it?
A number of years.
Yeah.
Probably 7 or 8 years. I'm talking, I would say, going into COVID, so 2020,
Yeah,
when I started to reevaluate things and really think, right, that's when, for me, that's when the change from abstinence to recovery really picked up pace.
right.
It was at that point, and I thought, no, I don't just want to survive anymore. I don't just want to survive. I want to actually thrive, progress, live a bit. And at the time, I had a lot of goals and challenges that I was in the middle of that I really wanted to push on with. So positive debt it was.
Yeah, that term you've just used, Chris, I wanted to go from just being abstinent to being in recovery. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, I mentioned before staying the right side of the line, and I think being abstinent for me is you are just the right side of the line. You're not really changing anything. You're not really putting the work in. You're not developing yourself. You're not really giving yourself the best chance, in all honesty, of moving forward positively. To recover is, as I say, to build that cushion, to bank the positive events. So you build that cushion away from day one, and when, like I say, life's negative aspects get thrown at you and the challenges, yeah, you might take a knock back, but you're still the right side of the line. If you just abstain and you take a knock back, all of a sudden you find yourself the wrong side of the line and back into negative habits. And I think that's massive for me, knowing the difference and trying to live the difference.
Yeah, and live. Like, I use that word so much, live. Like, you've just mentioned thrive. Like, that's surely what we want to be doing, isn't it? And a lot of people come on here and they'll talk about positive things that have happened in their recovery and good things that have gone on. Not many people see how I was 6-7 years abstinent, but my life wasn't really moving on all that much, and I wasn't thriving. It was great that I was abstinent. Like, that is something to be admired and something you should celebrate. But actually, there was more to Chris being Chris finding out who Chris was, Chris following some of his dreams and going pushing forward and becoming this new version of Chris. Is that fair to say?
I shy away from using the term becoming this new version of me. I genuinely think we sort of revert back to the version of Chris or the version of whoever we were beforehand, before addiction got hold of us and before we became this other thing. That's just a temporary version of you, and I think we just revert back to who we really were, our genuine, honest self.
Yeah.
And that took time, absolutely.
What were some of the things that you started to do then? What were some of the things that you started looking and going, who was I before this addiction, and what is it that I want to be doing with myself now?
I used to love exercise, the physical aspect of it. I had a physical job. I was a chef for a lot of years. That changed. I moved away from that as part of the changes of habits and changing my life. I didn't want to be around that lifestyle anymore. I got an office job, but with that, you become a bit more of a, have a bit more of a sedentary lifestyle. So I went back to the exercise routines. I went back to the running, the cycling was a big one for me. And then I eventually went back to karate when my daughter started and took that up as well. That was something I did as a kid. I started when I was 7 years old, probably trained till I was about 14, 15. Typical teenager, just gave it up and lost interest. My daughter started, I went back to the first class with her to take her along. I had no intention of joining back in. At that point, I thought I might do after a few months. But actually the instructor caught me trying to secretly guide my daughter along when she was at the end of the line, and she came across and said, "You've done this before and the first lesson's free, so you might as well stand next to her and join in." And that was that 8.5 years ago. Now it's massive. It's gone from something that was in my past to a hobby, to a passion, to pretty much everything. If you talk about being a gambling addict is what used to define you, that's probably what defines me now if I had to pick one thing.
Yeah. And I love more than anything, your daughter took an interest in it, and that was what got you back into it.
Yeah, so I'd not pushed that towards it, which is one thing I'd like sort of always reiterate. She had a taster day at school, like a taster session, and she came home and said, Dad, I really enjoyed this karate session, and can we see if there's any clubs around? And as it happened, we live, in the street we live is opposite a school, and there was a karate club in that school, so we started going twice a week there. I picked up to 3 times a week plus events, plus training elsewhere, going on different trips, 4 times a week, and it's just exploded, really.
Yeah, and I know what karate's brought to your life, but for anybody else that's listening, you've done all right out with it, haven't you, Chris? Tell us a little bit about your journey in karate and how that's actually helped you progress in your recovery and stuff.
It's been a massive focus. And I mentioned before, my daughter was 3 years old when I stopped gambling. I'd wasted those formative years, should have been building a bond with her, should have been really, cementing that father-daughter relationship, and I wasn't. The fact that my daughter took up karate and it enabled us to, go on trips, compete with each other, achieve things with each other. She's gone all the way through to her black belt as well. And I've seen it as somebody who's, in the classes with her, but also now, or was, teaching her as well. So from an instructor's point of view and from a parent's point of view, it's been fantastic to share that. We've gone as far as the national squad together, competed at the European Championships in Florence, 2023 that was, and the World Championships up in Dundee. And as it stands, 2023 I became national champion, also became world champion for my age range, I hasten to add, and European bronze in the year before that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
well
it's
done, mate.
been massive in terms of achievements personally, but it's also been massive in terms of that family dynamic and being able to share those experiences with my daughter.
Yeah. Do you know what it is, Chris? The accolades you've won, fair play to you, mate. Take my hat off to you. Congratulations. Massive, massive achievements. Way more than that, the bond and time and relationship you've got back with your daughter through karate is amazing. I think, for me, that's something that COVID gave me with my kids, and COVID allowed me time with my kids. I'd never had it before. I'd lost that relationship with the mother and stuff, so we weren't a family unit. COVID came along and gave us 2 years more or less to spend every day with my kids because the mother had to work and I didn't. So I got the opportunity to step up to the plate, to be dad, to form new bonds, to form new relationships. And I can see, just sitting here talking to you now, getting emotional about it. Like, for me, I get emotional thinking about them, that time, that bond, because we probably weren't present, were we, in active addiction as such? We weren't the best version of ourselves as a parent. We weren't the best version of ourselves in any area of our lives. And karate's enabled you to go away and build this new bond.
Yeah, it's been absolutely massive. And just in terms of, the medals, we've talked about this, plenty of people have talked about this. Every single, whatever it is I've won, it's in a box file on top of my wardrobe. A good
byproduct.
A good day last July means nothing today. In however long it is, 10, 20, 30 years time, when I retire, stop competing, whatever it is, I might look back and say, wow, look at what you did there. But in those 10, 20, 30 years now, I'm living every day with what it's given me back with my daughter.
Yeah, amazing. I would challenge you on that though, Chris, because some of them things you've just mentioned, the big things, celebrate, and I'm going to swear, but celebrate the fuck out of them, and I think it's hard for us to do in recovery. And I say that knowing I need to celebrate some of the stuff I do more, and I'm saying it to you because I really need to say it to myself as well, is I sometimes go, oh, I don't want to be in the limelight. I don't want a pat on the back. I don't want people to say well done. But actually it's like deep in me, there's a bit of Richie, there's an inner child sometimes in Richie that goes, I still don't deserve that. I still don't deserve that happiness. I still don't deserve that promotion. I still don't deserve to have a smile on my face. But actually I do. I do. And, you know, the hard work and effort you've put in to become world champion, celebrate the fuck out of it, Chris. You know, celebrate it, enjoy it. And the medal might be on the top of the thing, but no one will ever take it away from you. You know, and you'll always be able to say, I achieved this in my recovery. I was able to achieve this. Not even in my recovery, but in my life, I was able to achieve it. You're not defined by your recovery. You're not defined by anything, but you can celebrate it all.
Absolutely, yeah. And I have done, I have embraced it. And, you know, those around me will tell you that, you know, at the drop of a hat, I can relive every second of it. But part of the competitor in me is, like I say, the next challenge. What's next? What's next? What's next? That's in the past now. That's done. What's next? And as I say, when I finish, I might look back and say, wow, look at all of that. You did a hell of a lot together. There'll be a point where that medal will be there with a photograph and, you know, me competitor number and lanyard and that. It'll be in a frame somewhere. But that point isn't yet because I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
I'm still looking forward as to what's next. And it's funny because you chat outside of the karate circle and the you know, the event circle and things, and you'll talk and say like world champion, you know, phenomenal achievement, etc., etc. But then I can go to an event and I'll stand next to someone who's a 3-time world champion, 2-time European champion, and I'll stand next to someone who's a 4-time individual champion and they've won it with a team, and I'll stand next to someone who's, you know, got a gold, silver and a bronze, and I think, what am I in amongst all this, you know? Ultimately, I need to find something to motivate me, and if it is that, I'm not done yet, so don't look back. That's it. At this point in time, that's what I grab from it. Again, like I said before, a good day last July means nothing in the next competition, so you still got to work hard. If somebody else puts in twice the work because they lost to me on that day, and I sit and rest on my laurels, when I turn up next time, I'm going to get my arse kicked.
Yeah, I think there's lots of lessons for life in that analogy, Chris, is I get into recovery, and if I just think I'm done, you know, somebody's going to come along and bite us on the arse. Life's going to throw curveballs at us. Life's going to throw challenges at us. And if I'm not working on myself, I'm probably be very vulnerable in those situations, and who knows where I might end up. So, you know, that's what I've took from that conversation is like, yeah, I might be doing all right, and I might have been world champion in my own world of Richie, but I've still got work to do.
There is a side of us, you know, similar to what you said before, and I'll challenge you if I can. And if you've got something, it's because you deserve it. It's because you earned it. It's because you put the work in. You wouldn't have been looked at for that promotion, considered for it, if you hadn't done some things up to that point for people to look at you and say, actually, look at him and invite him for an interview, consider him for the position, whatever it was.
Yeah, totally.
Putting that work in.
Something else you said earlier on, Chris, is when you were given that ultimatum, you then had to look and go, I have done this, I have caused this, I want to pay it back, I want to do that. And that's pretty much the same, isn't it? Like, you were looking at the negative stuff that was a consequence of your action. Now you've got all this positive stuff as a consequence of your action. And I think that's an important message for people to hear. You know, we might have done stuff in the past that wasn't particularly we're not proud of, but actually when we do stuff in the you know, in the here and now, in the present, in our recovery that we are proud of, let's take the credit for that as well, because we're sharp to beat ourselves up about the other stuff, aren't we?
We are,
you know?
And I think probably a sign of high achievers, and arrogantly putting myself in that bracket, but probably a sign of high achievers is that self-reflection and self-critical element, and that usually outweighs the positive side, and it's usually other people pouring the positive in that you then have to listen to. And again, that's probably what keeps me trying to drive forward.
It's a fine balance though, isn't it?
It is, and again, I would say it's okay to have some days where you stand still or go backwards, as long as that doesn't fall into a habit and fall into a pattern. Recovery is not linear. It's not a straight line by any stretch of the imagination. As I say, life events in general will challenge you. Some days it's okay to go backwards, But also on those days, if they become regular and become a habit, it's also okay to reach out and recognise that.
Yeah, totally. I think something I encourage people to do a lot is to stop looking at the micro and come all the way out here and look at in your case, the 11-year journey, 12-year journey, Nelly, you've been on, you know, and if you were to step all the way over there and look in on it on a graph, it would probably look linear, but there would be loads of these little ups and downs and, you know, all these peaks and troughs, we like to call them and stuff. But actually, on the whole, there's progress, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah. Like I say, if you had to zone right out and look where I was back in October 2012, bluntly, it was an absolute shambles. It was a mess. It was everything I wouldn't want my life to look like.
Yeah.
As I said before, you know, a 30-year-old boy in his mum and dad's box room, didn't wake up with his partner, didn't wake up under the same roof as his daughter, and had minimal input in their lives. That's probably the exact opposite end of the scale as to what I wanted my life to look like.
Yeah.
And to be honest, what it looks like now.
Yeah, so, and that's what's possible. Like, that's the truth of the matter. That's where you were then. This is where you are now. Relationship, going all right?
Yeah, strong.
Good. Work through the
As
issues.
always, could be stronger, but
Yeah.
communication's there, and we talk openly to each other, and very, very big on accountability between us, and whether that's come through personality, recovery, whatever it is, probably a mixture, but yeah,
Stronger for it.
relationship's strong enough for it.
Yeah. Better relationship with your daughter, we've just touched on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Financially, you know, miles better situation, you
Miles
know.
better.
You're
Debt, but
okay
positive
with
debt.
debt, which is a massive thing. I'm okay with it because I've had great experiences from it. That's honestly, Chris, that's a world away from a lot of people that I work with. You know, I work with a lot of people not in active addiction, but in very early recovery.
Yeah.
Debt is huge. It's a massive, massive thing that they have to deal with. But actually now you just accept it's part of my life and I'm okay with that. And I think that's a massive, massive positive.
I think you said it before, as long as you're in control of it, if it gets too much and it's starting to affect other aspects, then yeah, there's an issue. But it's not.
Yeah.
I'm managing it, and I know the numbers will take care of itself. Selfishly, for example, with the credit cards, I've had their money, let them worry.
Yeah.
You know, Barclays on the end of the phone, HSBC, whoever it is, as long as I'm within the credit limit they've set, I've had their money and had great things from it. Let them worry.
Yeah, totally. I think if I was to ask you something about yourself, Chris, so go internal here, you know, what do you think the biggest difference is from 2012 to 2024? Because all of that doesn't just happen. Do you know what I mean? You don't just go from being here to being here, and it's like, without actually slightly improving, working on yourself, doing other stuff, reframing.
Yeah, it's sort of however you look at it, spinning, reframing, turn a negative into a positive. I think I've thrown a couple of examples before, you know, where people say, you know, I'm not lazy, I'm efficient. Do you know what I mean? I'm not stubborn, I'm determined. It's just, they're all labels at the end of the day, and you can use labels to define you, to limit you, or you can use labels to allow yourself to push on and allow yourself to go further. You don't even need to use labels, essentially, but you are going to, throughout your life, you can have the most conversations with yourself in your own head. Might as well make them positive ones while you're there.
Yeah, easier said than done.
It is. And it's,
Tell us some of the
again, 11
process that
years,
you've had to go through to get to that point of being able to do that.
It's a work in progress, and it probably always will be. You know, you're never going to be finished. That journey we spoke about, you know, 11 years is just to where I am now. I'm probably at the first services at this point on the journey. You know, but the biggest difference, and to be honest, partners and family will probably laugh if they listen to this podcast, but mental maturity for me is the difference. I was still acting up. I was still being childish about trying to resolve issues initially. And now it's just the realisation of that accountability comes to myself as well. I've got to be accountable with me. I've got to be responsible to me before I'm accountable to others. And the more honest I am with myself, probably the more progress I can make.
Yeah.
Looking back, you know, like you said before, have I planned for things? Have I put the work in? Have I put the effort in? Yeah, well, when I got something, I deserved it then. Did I not get the result I wanted? No. Well, did you put the work in that you should have to get that result? You can't be angry with yourself. You can't be upset for not achieving something if you didn't put the work in the first place.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely the whole ethos of my belief around recovery as well. If you want it, you can go and work for it. That's the truth of the matter. There's challenges. There'll always be challenges. Mental maturity. I love the saying. I'm pinching it, by the way. It's now trademarked as Richie's. Everything I talk about, I've pinched off someone though. So if anybody's watching this podcast and think, oh, he's got loads of good analogies, or he's got loads of good sayings, or I've just took them from somewhere else, and they've probably took them from somewhere else. And I think that's the way life works.
Yeah.
But mental maturity is tough, isn't it? It's not always easy to have mental maturity, and I say that because 3 or 4 weeks ago, my mental maturity was coming up my arse. Like, that's literally where it was. You know, I was doing things that I shouldn't. Like, I was acting out in ways that I wouldn't normally act out. I was getting angry. I was getting aggressive. I was talking to my mother like a piece of shit. Like, they're all signs that actually there's just something else going on that I need to deal with.
Well, that's the thing. Those are the signs, and you need to look backwards.
Yeah.
Realistically, again, and the mental maturity is realizing this. I've said before, you know, being a world champion doesn't mean I go to every competition, walk away with a gold medal. And I've walked away with silver medals, bronze medals, no medal. And I'm frustrated. Ultimately, I'm frustrated with myself. At that time, does it show out as frustration with myself? No, I probably lashed out at coaches that are next to me. I've lashed out at other competitors, not physically, but possibly verbally, in other ways, you know, ignorance at the time. What I've found is I tend to have a few days up to a week where I am that angry, frustrated person. But the mental maturity in me has allowed me to say, ignore that time period. That's not the true reflection. After the week, when you start to reevaluate, that's the bit you need to take forward. Whatever conclusions you come to then, that's the bit you need to move forward with and hang on to, because that's the true reflection of what happened there.
Yeah.
And why you achieved what you did or didn't achieve what you did.
And in life, you're allowed to be disappointed. That's ultimately what it is, isn't it? We can be disappointed with potentially a result or an outcome or something that's happened, but that's okay. That's okay. We learn from that. You know, what was the lesson? I didn't medal. What was the lesson? Need to work harder. Do you know what I mean? Like, it could be that simple. It could be a million reasons, but it could be something as simple as that. You know, for me, the last few weeks, going, oh, well, why did that happen? Well, I haven't dealt with that very well. I've got a bit stressed out with that. I didn't do as much exercise coming out the back of the marathon. There's loads of stuff that I hadn't been doing that helps Richie in his recovery. So there's no wonder I'm lashing out at people. There's no wonder that I'm losing my temper. There's no wonder I'm acting like a prick. Do you know what I mean? That's ultimately the signs, like you say, that say do something different. But that doesn't, it's not always easy to say that sometimes.
Well, this is, again, similar to life in general and recovery in general. It's a work in progress, isn't it? For me, the work in progress is like, I'll sit down at the beginning of the year. What are my goals this year? Big goals. Yeah. And then turn them goals into a plan to achieve them goals. Follow the plan through. Evaluate at the end of the year. Part of that progress, part of that moving forward is the beginning of the next year, I'll redefine the word success. What does it represent now? Mm-hmm. What is success to me? And that changes as I move forward. If I just said now, 10 years ago, what did you think was successful? I've done it. And this was one of the things I heard again online. I'll nick it from somebody else this time. But it was massive to me, and I've hung on to it, is you've already done things you said were going to make you happy.
Yeah. It is. It's true, isn't it?
You've already achieved things you said were going to make you happy. So why would you sit there miserable?
Yeah.
And that can be a short-term thing, but don't sit in misery for too long. You've already achieved things you said would make you happy.
Yeah, and I'm one of the biggest, I go inward on myself a lot and beat myself up and still sometimes think I'm not worthy and all the rest of it. And I use the term build the evidence. You know, build the evidence of the past 6 months, build the evidence of the last year, build the evidence of the last 11 years that I'm doing all right here. You know, and there's so many times in my life I've got to go back and just have a little look at some of the evidence that I'm doing all right. Because if I don't, I get caught up in the here and now. And sometimes, like you said, the here and now sometimes cannot be enough. And Richie should have more and should be doing better and should. And then the reality is, I'm exactly where I need to be in my life right now, doing exactly what I need to be doing. And if it wasn't, I would do the work to get to where I need to be.
Exactly that. I think it's I've got a smile because you used the phrase build the evidence. And I came to one of the epic weekend, the retreat weekend, and we were asked to write down a couple of things, that I would take from it. And I wrote 2 things down on a post-it note, was build the evidence, bank the confidence. And it was those 2 phrases. Yeah. Use the evidence to reinforce your belief, I'm good enough to be here, I'm good enough to be where I am now, I deserve it. And it was those exact words, build the evidence. I've still got that post-it note, it's on the notice board in me kitchen, and I look at it every now and then when I start thinking, do you deserve to be where you are? But the other side of that is, if you don't feel imposter syndrome every now and then, are you pushing yourself hard enough?
Yeah, I love that as well. I always say if you don't feel imposter syndrome, you're not playing a big enough game. Because if you're not, then you're not pushing the boundaries, you're not pushing the comfort zones a little bit. So yeah, totally on board with that one as well. Chris, 3 to 5 things in your toolbox for recovery now. What's 3 to 5 things that are important for you in your life and to manage your recovery?
Support network has been massive, expanding that over time, and people's understanding of what I need has been massive for my support network. And as I say, over them 11 years, it's changed. People have dropped out, people have come into it. But the people I have around me now are probably the strongest network of people I've had in those 11 years. And that's not by chance. That's because they get it. They understand it. And they're around me. So support network's been massive for me.
Number 2,
touched on it earlier, mental maturity. If you want to make progress, you've got to be honest with yourself, first of all. And then, the honesty with people around you and the accountability for your actions. Is it 100% of the time? No. But am I open and honest enough to sit here and say it's not 100% of the time? Yes. Am I trying to improve that percentage every day and every time I work on it? Yes. So mental maturity would be the second one for me.
Third one? I think I might know where this is going.
Exercise. Yeah, it's probably something many people have in some form or another with their recovery, whatever form it takes. Again, coming back to GA, one of the first bits of advice you get given is find something else to do with your time. And at the time, I thought, what they're talking about? But then you suddenly realise I spent a long time gambling. I need to fill that time before my head heads back there. And exercise, whether it been running, cycling, karate's obviously been massive. It gives routine, it gives structure, and it gives what my brain craves basically at this point. So exercise has been a massive part for me.
Good stuff. Do you want to add any more?
No, because I'm struggling to think of number 4. So before you say 4, we'll start.
Yeah. So 4 for me, Chris, was what I see is GA, that support network and that GA group. Being secretary of it, that must mean something to you as well.
It does, in terms of I'm in a position of trust, means something to me. People look at me and see me as someone who they'll take advice from, and that's massive for me. That comes in many forms. So work, I'm a mental health advocate at work, part of the scheme there, where people will come to me, I can signpost them towards somewhere else to go and seek support. The friendship groups that I've got, everybody supports each other, but the fact that you're in a position of trust, even in terms of the karate group, if the chief instructor goes away, I'm second in command, so I'm there and I'm handling finances, I'm handling cash. For somebody who blew so much cash, mine and other people's, for somebody else to put that trust in me is massive. So it all comes together in terms of other areas where people trust me.
Yeah, amazing. Chris Hulls, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. It's been great to get to know a little bit more about your journey. But yeah, thanks for showing up. Thanks for being vulnerable. Thanks for being honest.
Thanks for inviting us, and I've got to know a bit more about you while I'm here too, Richie.
Cheers, Chris.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Recovery Toolkit podcast. If you took something positive from it, then why not subscribe? If you or somebody you know has been suffering gambling-related harm, why not head over to our website where you can join our community? The link is in the show notes.